Multiple sclerosis affects an estimated 1.8 million people worldwide. As we continue to fight for a cure, we are happy to be joined by Anne Walpole during MS Awareness Month. Not only has she dedicated her time as a volunteer and leader of Charleston MSConnection, but she also navigates life with MS herself. Anne, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you sharing your story.
Well, we appreciate you letting us be here. Thank you.
How old were you when you were diagnosed?
I was 43.
Okay, you're 43.
Yeah. And I'm going to be 55 in April.
Okay.
So I've hit the 10-year mark. Yeah.
And now how was that diagnosis journey for you?
You know what? I had symptoms of MS long before I actually was diagnosed, but never put the tools together to figure out that I had MS. And it was a long road. You have to rule out a whole lot of things before you can actually land on MS.
Yeah.
So it was kind of long and scary and daunting.
What were some of those symptoms?
I started out thinking I was having carpal tunnel. I still have kind of a numb hand to this day. That was the main thing for me.
Okay.
And then when I started looking at symptoms, I realized, well, I have fatigue, I have balance issues, I had so many other things. But the thing that got me to the doctor was my numb hand.
Yeah. And now I have to ask you, when you got that diagnosis, how did you feel? Because I know that the symptoms mimic things that, are not very serious, and then things that, brain tumors, things of that nature. So how did you feel?
I actually was relieved because I kind of felt for months prior to my diagnosis that something was wrong.
Yeah.
And then once I knew that there was something we could kind of combat,
yeah,
it was a relieving feeling.
And now for those who may not know, can you kind of explain what MS is?
I would love to. It's been referred to as an autoimmune disease, but they've started calling it an immune deficit disease. Basically, it means that your immune system is doing something wrong. And what it does is it attacks your nerves in your body, in your central nervous system.
Yeah.
And it will eat the myelin sheath in your brain, in your spinal cord, in your optic nerve. And I actually had optic neuritis. So that was one of my first symptoms that years before I started having a numb hand. But that is what multiple sclerosis is. And sadly, there's not a cure right now
There's
either.
not a cure, but there are treatments that help.
Yes.
And now any of those symptoms that you had at the onset, did treatment help take some of those away?
Treatment doesn't really strive to do that. Treatment tries to just kind of stop it, but I do feel one of the things I have is fatigue, and my fatigue is a whole lot better when I have that 2 times a year infusion, and I can tell that I have a whole lot more energy after I've had my infusion.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges that you still face?
I feel like I just don't know what body I'm waking up to. If I do too much yesterday, it affects me today. If it's too hot outside, hello, we live in Charleston, it will affect me. I feel all the things that I typically have as a symptom kind of come back, but not being able to be the active person I once was is the hardest thing to come to terms with. But just not knowing if this leg's going to work properly today, or am I going to be able to walk from here to the kitchen without a rollator today. Just not knowing what today brings is the toughest thing.
And now you do a lot of work with the Charleston MSConnection. I'm assuming, did you start that when you got diagnosed?
No, I didn't actually. I did not want to be part of any group of people talking about MS when I was diagnosed. I had a friend whose mother passed away, but she had multiple sclerosis. But he started donating to the MS Society, so I was like, well, if that's good enough for him, it's good enough for us. So we started donating to the society, and I got introduced to the president of the North Carolina, South Carolina chapter. And after we started talking, she was like, we've had our peer group leader has had to leave. Would you want to maybe restart our group? And so I was like, and they called it a support group. I'm like, well, I don't want to call it a support group. That's one of the reasons why I stayed away for so long. And so we started the MS Connection, the Charleston MS Connection.
And so can you speak to some of the work that you guys are doing, or if there's any, new treatments on the horizon, or any cures talking?
Well, we basically just get together as a group of peers chatting and talking, and every now and then we'll have a new rep for a drug come in and talk to us. There's always something new on the horizon. These drug companies are working hard to make sure they can treat it. But we also have, I'm part of a council, the Coastal Council through the MS Society, and they help things, they do advocacy at Columbia and in DC, trying to help get legislation passed for MS and for drug companies and for us, so that we're not taken advantage of. And we also do the MS Walk, which is coming up in May. That's on the 11th, 10th or 11th, the Saturday of Mother's Day weekend.
Wonderful,
so
perfect.
they're always doing something
Yes, yes, and I think that the horizons it's very hopeful that there's continuing to be new things in the works.
Yes.
And I want to thank you so much again for coming and sharing your story. And yes, the MS Walk is on May 11th, and for more information on that and also the work here in Charleston, you can visit nationalmssociety.org. And thank you so much again.
You're welcome.
We're back after this.